No one imagined a single moment could shake Britain's political foundations so violently. Yet, in just a few days, London has been thrust into chaos. Donald Trump has declared open war on Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer. And the shockwave intensified when King Charles III appeared, ever so subtly, to back the American president's stance. But before we get started, if you find value in what we're doing here, lend us a hand and subscribe today. Thank you for your support. This is not backroom diplomacy. It is a storm raging on television screens, in the press, and across social media. A battle for legitimacy playing out before the entire world. 3 days ago, Trump sat down for a primetime interview in the United States. What followed was nothing less than what commentators are calling a public political assassination. This was no polite disagreement between allies. It was a direct attack. With a voice sharp as a blade, Trump thundered, "You don't tell Americans what they can say. And you don't put people who broke the law in 5-star hotels while your heroes sleep on the streets." His words ripped through the fabric of diplomatic courtesy, hitting Britain at its most vulnerable point: the homelessness of war veterans versus the luxury accommodation of illegal migrants. The figures Trump cited were staggering. Under Starmer's Labour government, taxpayers are funding £250 a night per migrant for luxury hotels, 4-star suites, seaside views, gyms, buffets, even room service. Meanwhile, Britain's veterans, men and women who risked everything for Queen and country, are left to sleep rough on freezing pavements. The face of this tragedy became James Patterson, a 67-year-old former Royal Marine who served 3 tours in Afghanistan. Last week, he was found sleeping in a cardboard box outside a London McDonald's, surviving on leftover food and the kindness of strangers. That single image, a war hero shivering on the streets while migrants dine in hotels, ignited a firestorm of moral outrage. If Trump's attack was explosive, what came next was nuclear. Just 48 hours later, King Charles III broke with decades of tradition during a veterans' charity gala. His words carried the weight of centuries of monarchy. Those who have served this nation with honour and courage deserve our respect, our gratitude, and our care before all others. That final phrase, "before all others," reverberated like thunder. It was more than a sentiment, it was a statement. For many, it was the monarch himself siding, however discreetly, with Trump and against his own Prime Minister. Palace insiders confirm the king has been privately outraged for months about the plight of veterans. He has even personally funded emergency housing initiatives when the government failed to act. For a monarch famed for neutrality, this was an extraordinary breach and a devastating blow to Starmer's authority. The fallout was immediate. The hashtag #Veterans First trended across 17 countries. Social media flooded with split-screen images. Migrants enjoying luxury hotel meals beside veterans huddled in sleeping bags on wet concrete. Inside 10 Downing Street, the atmosphere turned to panic. Leaks from senior aides described Starmer as visibly shaken, his cabinet meetings consumed not with governing, but with damage control. Several ministers began warning that the migrant housing policy was becoming politically toxic. The crisis reached its crescendo in the House of Commons during Prime Minister's questions. Conservative MP Sarah Henderson stood, holding a large photograph of James Patterson. Silence fell. "Mr. Speaker," she began, voice steady with fury, "I ask the Prime Minister to look at this man, a veteran who served 3 tours in Afghanistan. Can he explain to James, to this House, and to the British people why his government believes it more important to silence American voices online than to give this hero a warm bed to sleep in?" The chamber froze. Cameras zoomed in on Starmer's face as he stammered through rehearsed platitudes about complex challenges. But the damage was done. Within minutes, the clip was viral. Trump shared it to his 87 million followers with just 8 words. This is the question Britain deserves answered. Over 50 million views in hours. Headlines across continents. The moral contradiction laid bare in one devastating moment. But the crisis wasn't just domestic. Trump's fury also targeted Starmer's flagship policy, the Online Safety Act. Critics call it state-backed censorship on steroids, giving the UK sweeping powers to regulate speech online, even overseas. Trump warned, "The moment you let other countries dictate what our people can say, you've lost the very freedom that built our nations." The White House quickly clarified. Trump's words were now official US policy. The State Department issued a formal diplomatic protest. American tech giants convened emergency sessions, some drafting contingency plans to pull operations out of Britain entirely. The fallout was swift. The long-promised US-UK trade deal was quietly shelved. British tech stocks plunged. Economists warned Britain was isolating itself from the digital economy of the future. As international pressure mounted, Starmer's problems multiplied at home. Labour's backbenchers began fracturing. 12 MPs signed a letter demanding a review of migrant housing policy. 3 junior ministers sought private meetings with Starmer to express grave concerns. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage smelled blood. Launching a Veterans First campaign, his Reform UK party surged 8 points in national polling within 3 days. The once solid Labour coalition was crumbling from both outside and within. Yet beyond the politics, the image that defines this crisis is painfully human. A veteran, bent with age, trembling with cold, sleeping in a cardboard box in the shadow of a fast food chain. A king's eyes welling with anger at the betrayal of those who served. A public crying out for justice, for decency, for dignity. This is no longer about numbers on a government spreadsheet. It's about the soul of a nation. At this point, the question is no longer whether Starmer can politically survive. It is whether his government retains any moral legitimacy to govern at all. Because when your own monarch and a foreign president stand united against you, this is not a policy disagreement. It is a legitimacy crisis. Trump, from across the Atlantic, has managed the unthinkable: to shift Britain's political discourse, to give voice to frustrations politicians feared to name, to expose the gap between government priorities and public values. And King Charles, in breaking his silence, has amplified the message: Britain must care for its heroes before all others. So, what does this mean for the future? Is Trump a defender of freedom, or an opportunist exploiting Britain's wounds? This is more than a political row. It is a referendum on Britain's soul, a test of Western democracy itself. And it is only just beginning. So, what do you think?